These are the faces of women, all killed by men previously reported to police, in most cases by the victims themselves. Time and again, families left feeling failed by those trusted to protect their loved ones, like Regan Tierney.
Regan was just the most loving, caring, kind. She was such a good mum to the children, and she was just the most amazing person and sister you could ever ask for.
But on the 5th of June 2019, Regan was stabbed to death by her ex-partner Daniel Patton while their children slept in the room next door. He then killed himself. For 10 years, he'd been violent and controlling. She reported him to police repeatedly, even telling officers Patton threatened to put her head on a spike. Yet Greater Manchester Police underestimated how at risk she was. 8 days after they visited her, she was dead.
Alan got a phone call off my nana, and she said, "Your granddad's just got a phone call off Danny saying you need to come and get the kids. I've killed Regan." As soon as we got there, I just knew, and I just jumped out of the taxi, sprinted over, and one of the officers, I'll never forget this, I ran and he pushed me backwards, and I said, "I told you this was going to happen." They were my first words. "I told you this was going to happen." And then my granddad turned up, bless him. I'll never, ever, ever forget. It makes me, the look in his eyes. And he sat there, and I just looked at him and I just shook my head. And he just cried, and that's the only time I've ever really seen my granddad cry.
Shannon and her family fought for 5 years for an in-depth inquest into Regan's death. It found missed opportunities to protect her, an inaccurate police risk assessment, and a failure by police to offer her various forms of protection, which, if she had accepted, could have prevented her death.
How do you feel towards the police now?
There's no trust. There's no faith.
Just let down.
Very let down. They're a public service. They were meant to protect Regan, and they didn't.
Our investigation has found Regan was one of at least 95 women across the country killed by men between 2019 and 2023, already known to police.
The majority of those women had reported the men themselves, and we've discovered in 20 cases clear police failings have been identified, while at least 14 cases are still being reviewed.
It's all about doing the very best by your victims, because that's what you're there. You're there to uphold the law, aren't you, at the end of the day?
Louise Taylor was a police officer for 10 years. While she left policing in 2009, she believes the behaviours she saw from some officers then still exist today, and now helps coach survivors of domestic abuse.
I have to say, there was some really good police officers, but some really, really poor police officers. And there were times when I went to reports of domestic abuse, and it was more than clear that the police officers I went with just couldn't be bothered.
So when you speak to the victims and survivors that you work with now, versus your experience when you were in the police force, do you see a difference? Do you see a change in attitude?
I don't know. I have knowledge of one female victim who was in fear of being raped. She'd told she was going to be raped, and the call handler said, "Is the offender still there?" And she said, "Nobody said he's coming back. I'm sorry, we haven't got anybody that's available at the moment. If he does come back and you're in fear at that time, give us another ring." I mean, you just couldn't make that up.
Emergency.
Hello.
Hello, you alright, my darling?
Raneem Uda called police 4 times on the night she was killed by her ex-partner. He killed her mother too, but West Midlands Police failed to send any officers until they were both stabbed to death. Since then, her Aunt Noor has campaigned tirelessly alongside the now safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips to implement Raneem's law, embedding domestic abuse specialists in police control rooms.
Sorry, is that B or a B?
3 months into the pilot scheme, ITV News was given access to the control room at West Midlands Police, one of the 5 forces taking part.
In terms of real life impact then so far, what kind of results have you seen from this?
We've seen a 40% increase in the first month alone of call handlers, showing that professional curiosity, specifically when it comes to those vulnerable factors. At the end of the day, each time that someone calls through, they need to feel supported, they need to feel that they're believed at the end of the day. And because if they don't have that first time round, it could affect whether or not they ever call through again, and that could put them at real risk.
The scheme's been funded by the Home Office as part of the government's promise to halve violence against women and girls in the next decade. But a recent report questioned the effectiveness of strategies issued by previous governments. So we asked the Safeguarding Minister, how will this strategy be any different?
Well, for a start off, my strategy will be written by me, somebody who's worked in the field for decades. There have never been any standards for the police to live by with regard to violence against women and girls. They don't have to report on it, they're not judged against it. This government is looking across the piece at policing standards and will be releasing huge changes in policing that are around priorities exactly like that.
The Domestic Abuse Commissioner, the Victims Commissioner and a number of police chiefs have written to the government expressing worry that you will not meet those pledges without funding. Are you confident that they will have enough funding to meet your pledge?
Of course, I will always want more. I will always want to be able to spend as much as possible on all of these things. However, what I would say is that throwing money at poor performing police forces, actually making more of that, more bad practice, isn't going to improve things. What I know is that we've got to start doing things and funding things that stop this happening in the first place.
So in 5 years' time, if we're sat here having this same conversation, are you confident that there won't be another 95 women killed by men known to the police?
Yes, actually, I feel relatively confident that we will reduce the number of incidences of violence, and in that you reduce the incidences of fatal violence.
Matthew Gold runs a law firm specialising in representing the families of those killed in domestic homicides. Each year, up to 5 of his cases find failings, a clear sign, he says, that police aren't learning lessons.
I see patterns of police officers failing to link incidents of domestic abuse and failing to appreciate that normally the severity of the abuse increases from incident to incident, often ending up in the victim's death.
In the case of Regan Tierney, Greater Manchester Police told us since 2021 their improved response to domestic abuse has helped halve homicides. They understand that there were missed opportunities in Regan's case and acknowledge that improvements made to ways of working since will not take away the pain from her family.
That was a nice one of them too.
Shannon and Alan live that pain every day. Now guardians to Regan's 2 children, they say they are raising them to understand what happened to their mum, so they know she tried to reach out for help, but tragically, it came too late.
They let her down and her children. It can't continue. It can't continue.